Picture this. It's June 14th, 2025. The South China Sea. A Chinese destroyer, one of the most advanced warships in the People's Liberation Army Navy, receives a direct order from Beijing. Intercept the USS Nimitz. The Nimitz, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier the size of 3 football fields, carrying 90 warplanes, 6,000 sailors, and enough firepower to level a small country. And China just sent one ship to stop it. Beat. Let breathe. What happened next wasn't just a confrontation. It was a masterclass in why challenging the United States Navy in international waters in broad daylight is one of the most dangerous decisions any military can make. This is exactly how it unfolded, setting the stage. Before we get to the showdown, you need to understand why this happened. The South China Sea is not just water. It's the most contested body of water on Earth. Roughly $3.4 trillion worth of global trade passes through it every single year. Oil tankers, container ships, military vessels, all funneled through a region where 6 countries are fighting over the same rocks, reefs, and islands. China's claim? Almost all of it. They drew a line on a map called the 9-dash line and essentially said, "This is ours." The problem? The United Nations, the United States, and most of the world's navies say that's completely illegal under international law. So what does the US Navy do? They sail through it, deliberately, repeatedly, on purpose. These are called Freedom of Navigation Operations, FONOPs, and they're not accidents. They're a message, a very loud, very expensive, very nuclear-powered message that says, you don't own these waters. Nobody does. And the USS Nimitz? This wasn't just any ship making a point. The Nimitz is 1,092 feet long. It displaces 104,000 tons of water. It was commissioned in 1975 and has been in near continuous service for 50 years. As of 2025, she was on her final active deployment, a last patrol before heading into retirement. China knew exactly what it was, and they sent a ship anyway. The order is given. June 14th, 9:23 in the morning, local time. The Nimitz Carrier Strike Group is conducting routine flight operations. F/A-18 Super Hornets are cycling through the deck. Radar is painting everything within 300 miles. This is a machine that never sleeps. Then, from a Chinese naval command, the order goes out. A Type 052D destroyer, one of China's most capable surface combatants, breaks formation and accelerates toward the American group. Now, let's be clear about what a Type 052D is. It's not a Coast Guard boat. It's not a patrol vessel. This is a guided missile destroyer with 64 vertical launch cells, anti-ship missiles, a sophisticated air defense radar, and a crew trained for exactly this kind of confrontation. It's an impressive ship. In almost any other context, it would be the most dangerous thing in the water. But it just sailed toward a carrier strike group. Here's what most people don't realize about a U.S. carrier strike group. The carrier is almost never the most dangerous thing in it. Surrounding the Nimitz were multiple Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, ships designed specifically to kill other ships, submarines, aircraft, and incoming missiles simultaneously. Below the surface, a fast attack submarine, running silent, running deep, tracking every Chinese vessel in the area. And above, carrier Air Wing 17, dozens of combat aircraft, including EA-18G Growlers, electronic warfare jets designed to blind enemy radar and communications the moment shooting starts. The Chinese destroyer was sailing into a trap. It just didn't know it yet. The confrontation. As the Chinese destroyer closed the distance, the U.S. Navy did something that surprised everyone watching. Nothing. At first. No course change. No radio warning. No visible reaction. This is doctrine. You don't blink. You don't flinch. You demonstrate, through pure stillness, that you are not afraid. That the other ship's approach is, in your professional assessment, not a threat worth reacting to. That is psychologically devastating. The Chinese destroyer kept coming. J-15 fighters launched from China's newest carrier operating nearby. Whether as support, surveillance, or intimidation is still debated. Now it was a 3-dimensional confrontation. Surface ships, aircraft, and somewhere below the surface, the submarine nobody was talking about. Radio contact was attempted. Standard procedure. The Chinese vessel identified itself and made its intention clear. The USS Nimitz was operating in what Beijing considers sovereign waters and was ordered to alter course. The American response, according to declassified communications, was professional, direct, and completely unmoved. We are conducting lawful freedom of navigation operations in international waters. We do not intend to alter course. What followed was a game of brinkmanship that lasted over 3 hours. The Chinese destroyer came within a distance that, in naval terms, is extraordinarily close for vessels of this size. Radar locks were exchanged. Electronic warfare systems on both sides hummed to life. The growlers orbiting above began passive jamming profiles. Not aggressive enough to trigger a response, but enough to remind Beijing exactly what they were dealing with. Every move was watched. Every signal was logged. Both sides knew that one miscalculation, one nervous weapons officer, one misread radar return, could turn a confrontation into something that couldn't be walked back. The response. Here's where it gets interesting. The U.S. didn't just hold its position. It communicated. Not with words, with assets. Within 90 minutes of the Chinese destroyer's approach, the carrier air wing began launching additional sorties. Not attack profiles, surveillance, and patrol. But the message was unambiguous. We see you, we can reach you, and we have options you can't match. The submarine, and this detail matters, surfaced briefly, just long enough to be seen on radar, then dove again. Think about what that communicates. We were down here the whole time. You had no idea. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the National Security Council was monitoring the situation in real time. Pacific Fleet Command had eyes on every vessel. The chain of command was intact. Decisions were being made at the highest level. China, for its part, was watching something it had studied in briefings and war games, but had never experienced in quite this way. The full-spectrum response capability of a U.S. carrier strike group operating with complete confidence in contested waters. The Chinese destroyer eventually broke off. It didn't retreat in any dramatic way. That's not how these things work. It simply altered course, gradually, professionally, as if the whole encounter had been a routine navigation exercise. But everyone on both sides knew exactly what had just happened, what this really means. Now here's the part that most coverage gets wrong. This wasn't just a military story. It was a strategic story. China's challenge of the USS Nimitz wasn't random aggression. It was a test, a carefully considered probe designed to answer a very specific question. How will the United States respond when directly challenged in the South China Sea in 2025? And the answer they got was not what Beijing's more aggressive analysts were hoping for. The U.S. didn't escalate, but it also didn't yield. It demonstrated, with extraordinary precision, that it can hold its position without blinking, deploy overwhelming capability without firing a shot, and communicate resolve through presence alone. That's not weakness. That's mastery. Here's the broader context you need to understand. China's military has grown enormously in the last 2 decades. The plan today is the largest navy in the world by number of hulls. They have 2 operational aircraft carriers with more under construction. Their shipbuilding capacity vastly exceeds that of the United States. But size isn't the whole story. The U.S. Navy has 80 years of blue water operational experience that China simply doesn't have. Carrier operations are extraordinarily complex. Coordinating a strike group across multiple domains, air, surface, subsurface, space, cyber, requires a kind of institutional knowledge that can't be downloaded or reverse engineered. China is building toward that capability, but it isn't there yet. And incidents like June 14th are, in a very real sense, China gathering the data it needs to get there. Every encounter teaches their commander something. Every confrontation reveals American procedures, response times, communication patterns, and decision-making rhythms. This is why these encounters are far more consequential than they look. The bigger picture. The South China Sea is a preview. What's happening there, right now, as you watch this, is a slow-motion contest for control of the most important maritime corridor in the world. The stakes are not abstract. If China were to successfully establish de facto control over the South China Sea, it would gain leverage over the economies of Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, Vietnam, and every nation that ships goods through those waters. That's leverage over most of the global economy. That's why the United States sails there. That's why freedom of navigation operations matter. Not because of any specific reef or island, but because the principle of open international waters underpins the entire modern global trading system. And the USS Nimitz, on her final deployment, sailing into those contested waters one last time, wasn't just a warship on a routine patrol. She was a symbol, a 50-year-old reminder that some things don't change. The sea is free, and the U.S. Navy intends to keep it that way. The USS Nimitz returned to port in early 2026 to begin decommissioning. After half a century of service, her work was done. But the South China Sea didn't get quieter. If anything, it got louder. Because China isn't backing down, and neither is the United States. What June 14 showed us is that we're living in an era where the next war, if it comes, won't start with a declaration. It'll start with a radar lock that goes half a second too long, a captain who misreads an order, a moment where the tension that's been building for years finally snaps. We're not there yet, but we're closer than most people realize. If you want to understand what's really happening in the Pacific, not the headlines, but the strategy, the technology, the human decisions behind these confrontations, subscribe. We cover this every week. And if you think someone else needs to see this, share it. Because this story isn't going away.